Hello, Michael. It's been a decent time between episodes, I think.
It has been.
We've had busy schedules.
We have had very busy schedules. We are busy men. We are very, very busy gentlemen.
But we'll try to get try to keep the schedule.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to be here. So how do we meet? Let's just have a discussion on who we actually are and go from there, I guess.
How we met. So it was all the way back in...
I'll let you do it.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
Yeah,
I will do it.
And then I'll pick it up.
I will do the honours. So, Matthew, we met in 2016. Quite a warm day. I think it was back in... Might have been late February. And it was our orientation day. And when I say they, the RMIT cohort wanted to bring everyone together in a big auditorium in Building 80. So good old Building 80 on Swanston Street. Was it Building 80?
I thought it was Building 9.
It might have been Building 9. I might be thinking of a different day.
Yeah, I think it was a big building 9. I mean, not a big classroom building 9.
We'll agree to disagree. And so, yeah, Building 9/80. And, yeah, they assigned certain groups and people would get a tour around campus and we were in a group together. And you're a little quiet and unassuming at first, but we picked up pretty quickly and we got along super well. And we knew that we would be good friends, not only throughout our entire degree, but through life. And so I think it was a lovely meeting. And also in that group, we had a couple of people who we have remained friends with as well throughout our entire degree. Of course, this is the RMIT Bachelor of Communications in brackets media degree.
Yeah.
BP 228 possibly, I think.
I think it's 221.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. So we met through then and we had very similar interests. You had a different background, of course, which you'll touch on a little bit. But my background coming into the course was pretty straightforward, straight out of high school. So had a good ATAR entry level, which helped me get into the course. I was sold on media probably from about year 11 when I was doing it as a class. And so in my final year of VCE, which is, of course, the Victorian education system, I made a documentary for my final media film, and that essentially helped me get into the course along with all my other exam results.
What was the documentary about?
Oh, yeah. So the documentary was... I made it in 2015, and at the time, it was the centenary of the landing at Gallipoli and the whole Gallipoli campaign for the Anzacs, the Australian New Zealand Army Corps. So made a documentary interviewing a whole bunch of past and present servicemen and women in the Australian military, and also interviewed a couple of people who volunteer at the Shrine of Remembrance in Melbourne, and brought all of those together.
It must have been a big project.
It was a big project. I was balancing a lot at the time. I was trying to do a lot of different charity events at the school.
5 different subjects as well.
Yeah, well, that's it. Had 5 different subjects. Wrote a short play that was performed, I think, midway through the year as well. And on top of that, I was also doing charity work at the school as well for certain events like at Footy Colours Day for Beyond Blue and stuff. So, yeah, it was a busy year. It was a really busy year, 2015. And I kind of thought going into university that maybe it would be a little less busy. But, of course, as you know, Matthew, it was not so. It's a different kind of busy. Different kind of independence, different kind of busy.
Nobody really... prepares you for life after high school when you're in high school.
No, you don't. I mean... You're
kind of young and unassuming in a way.
You are. And I think they, with the flexibility of classes that you can choose from, at least I'm talking from experience at my school, you are certainly given more options and you can kind of tailor your classes to your kind of career focus. So in a way, that is a little bit like university when you get your electives and your classes and you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do. So it is a little bit like university like that, but it's still a lot of the you still conform to that whole high school system. So yeah, it's very different. But anyway, made the documentary. It was really successful in I suppose its reception. I didn't necessarily know what I was doing making a documentary. It was my very first time making one. But I wanted to challenge myself. I thought last year at school, let's do something I'm really passionate about. My dad volunteers at the Shrine of Remembrance, so I thought, that's a good link to have.
That's a good... It's probably got you all the interviews, probably.
That's right. And so, yeah, he did. He literally did. But one of the best interviews I got was through a guy who was featured in the Herald Sun that year, and his name was Frank Stabak. And Frank was a veteran, and in fact a prisoner of war during the fall of Singapore back in 1943, 42 possibly. Anyway, he was a prisoner of war under the Japanese.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a 90... At the time, he was 96, so he's a lot older now, nearly 100, and incredibly sprightly man for his age, and gave maybe one of the most emotional and most sensational interviews I've ever had. And just incredibly...
What kind of impression did you get from him?
You could just tell he'd been through a lot, but you could
just tell
tell...
with someone who's been through a world war like that?
It's not easy to, I suppose, get someone to open up about that experience. Even what he was telling me, he even said to me off camera, this is the first time I'm telling anyone outside of my family, externally to my family, these stories of torment that I had by the Japanese.
But he must be extremely proud to have survived through that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily gone through, but survived it.
I mean, as someone who's...
Well, we're getting a bit off track here.
No, we are, but at the same time, just incredible story. And I think we'll touch on it later, why we do media, why we love media, why we love the course. I mean, it's about the human stories. And he certainly inspired me to continue making inspirational documentaries. We'll get into a little bit of the course detail later, but certainly he was one of the catalysts for where I find myself now. And so making that documentary back in 2015 really helped me get into RMIT, and as a result, it's really put me on the right path. So yeah, good point that you bring up about, what got me into the course. I certainly think that was a really strong factor going forward. Yeah,
I want to harken back to how we actually met. I think we were doing something like speed dating when...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we were. Gosh, you got a good memory.
When one circle of the group would rotate the other every minute or so, and you'd tell each other why you're doing it.
We didn't have enough time.
I think we were next to each other.
We did. We were.
So it was quite fortunate. And then I think the way it ended was that our friendship group that we have right now, we just ended up together. So I don't know if it's out of necessity or just chance.
Dongy, in life, everything happens for a reason, and we were brought together through a higher power. And
Is that how it works?
I mean, you cleaned up that day. You got a lot of phone numbers out of the speed dating. You did very well. You did very well. I remember looking at you, and you had several digits on your hands. I'm going, far out. This guy's a king.
Might be a concentration camp.
No, come on.
Oh, no.
We'll just cut that one out.
That's a bad joke.
Cut that one out. But no. It was a really fun activity, and I certainly think through more of the dialogue I was hearing,
I think
through
the longer
the conversations,
and longer. I think when we met, it was out of chance. But the longer we spent time together, we started becoming more friends.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know we found out pretty early that we were both into the footy.
Yeah, very strong, very
early. Yeah,
very strongly.
And I think you were a bit of a, I don't know, just not a heckler, but a little bit of comment here and there between the teachers.
Oh yeah.
I'm
a joker.
Yeah,
that's what I do.
I'd harken back a little bit of back and forth. Yeah,
there's some good banter there. Certainly, there was one teacher that didn't like me too much, but
I think we were told in the lectures to shut up most of the time.
Pretty much every week. I think we were on the chopping block.
It didn't help us that we were sat behind the teachers for most.
No, we were in their clear vision, but in a way, we were kind of asking for it, weren't we?
Yeah.
And I remember. Sorry to cut you off there, Dongy, but I remember one week I come into the lecture. And you're all tanned and everything. I'm like, where have you been the last 2 weeks, man? And he goes, and this is like week 4 or week 5. I don't know. It was early on in the degree, and you go, just came back from Hawaii. I'm like, what? You just came back from Hawaii? It was so random. It was just like so random.
I bought the tickets before I started uni.
So you're kind of thinking to yourself, if this degree doesn't last more than a couple of weeks, I've got a fallback. I've got my ukulele career waiting for me in Hawaii.
I thought I can get away with it, but I had to do some work overseas.
But it wasn't all bad. I mean, you just had to put up with doing your work on the side of a nice beach, getting sun and being handed pina coladas. So poor you.
Nice vlog.
Had it
man.
tough,
Yeah.
man. Had it tough.
But yeah, I just want to talk about before, because I had a different
You did have a
background.
different background.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Throughout high school, I did what was called the Asian Five. So I did, well, English was mandatory, and then I did chemistry, physics, maths methods, and specialist maths, which are the two hardest
Juicy.
maths.
Juicy.
And also arguably two of the hardest sciences being offered.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I didn't do well. I didn't do too well in chemistry, but
So is there a reason why you were doing them? Was there a certain career path that you were looking at that
not
entailed
really.
those?
I wasn't told, that that's harking down a career path.
Right.
But I'll talk about that in just a little second.
Of course.
But yeah, so basically the philosophy was that you do the hardest subjects in high school now, so that when you finish high school, you get the highest possible score you can, and then you can do whatever the fuck you want. You know, that was the philosophy.
Free range.
My parents and I went to tutoring at the time. My tutor, who's a good man, that's the philosophy he told me. And so yeah, but first year I thought I was into engineering because when I went to the careers counsellor at my school, they're like, "Oh, you're doing the maths and sciences, so engineering looks like a fit for you," you know.
There you go.
But I found out very early first year. So I graduated a year before you.
Correct.
So in that first year, 2015, I was doing engineering for a semester, and I realized that it wasn't for me. Every week was like there's like doing a whole unit in maths, which would have taken 3 weeks or 4 weeks in high school, but you're doing it in a week, you'd have one class of it. The rest you had to do at home, and I'm like, oh god, this is. I mean, it was doable.
It wasn't enjoyable.
It wasn't enjoyable, and then I just looked at it long term, and like I didn't see myself doing this for the foreseeable future. Like 5 years of doing that, even the first 2 years of just mostly theory, and then you go into practical, and like I can't see myself learning and applying this, and then much less doing it as a job. I'm like, this is not fulfilling for me.
That's right.
And I guess that's part of why we did media.
And but there must be a reason why,
Yeah, so I took
Yeah.
the second semester off of that year
Yes.
off, and then I just realized what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed watching movies. I got a real kick out of so one of the first things I've watched behind the scenes wise was Lord of the Rings.
Ah, yes.
So the entire trilogy.
Huge success.
Yeah, so I watched the behind the scenes of that, and it was just like, oh my god, there's so much that goes into filmmaking that I was so, it just like gravitated me towards that, and seeing everything from the start of production, which they had like all the armor sets, they had all the swords ready, and it's just a lot of hard work. I mean, the people who made the chainmail in those films, they worked by hand, and everything was done a year before production. Wow. And so I was just the massive project in its inception was something that I wanted to be a part of. And so that's the reason why I started doing media and started going to film studies. And I just want to ask you, like, when did you think it was right for you? Because I had a different sort of moment in that.
Yes.
I was very anxious even before we started the course, and it wasn't until probably a bit into that first semester where I get like, oh yeah, I feel comfortable in what I'm doing. Yeah,
that's very true. It took a little bit of time to adjust, particularly in that first semester, because things were very broad at the time. But as far as me getting into media, I had to really think hard about what I wanted to do as a career. There was a lot of options there available. My family on my dad's side, about 5 generations back, we are all primary school teachers. So there was a very strong belief that I would be the 5th generation to be a primary school teacher. And I've always been really good with kids.
Profession.
Yeah, at the time it was my preferred profession. Probably we're talking like maybe as early as year 8, year 9. We did a lot of work experience. I'm not too sure about you at your school, but we did a lot of work experience around year 9. So I would have been maybe 15, 16. And I did some work experience at my old kindergarten. And I really enjoyed it. The kids absolutely loved me. They thought I was a great entertainer. and I got a lot of enjoyment out of being the entertainer and looking after people. So I was kind of going down that path for a long time. And then when I started doing media in about year 11, and the reason I picked media was because I've always loved films. I've always loved television and films. Love watching them, admire them greatly. And so at that stage, I'm like, this seems like a really enjoyable thing to do. But when I got to the very end of my degree and I, made my documentary and I was still considering possibly doing teaching and possibly doing media.
You're talking about the end of high school. Right?
We're talking the end of high school, so the end of 2015. There was a watershed moment for me. There was a really big, moment for me where I had to think back to when I was a kid. I thought back to when I was a kid. When you're arguably your purest self, where you're doing things that you really love and you're not really thinking about consequences. You're just doing something really pure that seems natural to you. And I thought back and I thought, what was I like as a kid? And a couple of things I did was at a kid that was quite profound to me, that's always had an impact on me. I was always a storyteller. I was always a writer. I always used to write stories. I would reenact things. I'd run around the garden. I would literally play out an idea to a clock. So how long's a film usually? 90 minutes, maybe 120. So sometimes I would play out an idea in my head for that period of time. And I'd play out that idea and I would then write it down, I'd script it, and that's what I used to love doing. I'd always be a great admirer of films. And another thing I used to do when I was a kid, I was an entertainer. We used to have a lot of guests over at our house. I'd always be entertaining. I'd always be showing people my stories, and I'd always be talking to people. So I took those two interests when I was a kid, those things I absolutely used to love doing when I was a kid, and I thought, how can I have a career doing these things that I clearly love and that I've always loved from a very young age? And when I thought about media and I thought about the elements in that, filmmaking, storytelling, entertaining, presenting on radio and television, I thought, this is the career for me. This is what I love.
You never really think about it because just the way our high school system works.
Correct.
You never really... it doesn't really empower students to find their own career.
Correct.
They're kind of just being pushed into careers that already exist.
It's a tough thing.
It's a tough sell. I know my school. The reason why they're so successful is that they focus on getting good ATAR scores rather than career building for
similar to my
students.
School. Yep.
And I guess that's a lot of private schools.
It is.
That's why you send your kid there.
Exactly.
Which I think, just retrospectively looking back, has its merits, but also has its downsides.
Definitely.
Because I feel like a lot of students and a lot of our friends, they're just going through the motions. Of course, this is all conjecture, but it just feels like that they're being pushed into careers that, but there's nothing wrong with that. If they're able to do it, then they can do it.
They enjoy it.
Yeah.
Good luck to them.
But from where we come from, I think we just find something else that's more meaningful and more beholden to our ideas and ideals, so that we find something meaningful in our careers rather than chasing a paycheck. Because I know that I have the ability to just go into something that's maths or science related and find a career in that pays well, but it's not something that I'd really want to do. It feels like something I'd sell my soul a bit for.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess you had the same thing with teaching.
100%. Yeah. I would have enjoyed it. I think I would have thrived at it, and the pay would have been
Don't
decent.
get me wrong,
but I would have felt like
being a good scientist or whatever. Has its merits. And I love science. I still love science videos.
Yeah,
definitely. Still get a kick out of it.
Sure.
I love. I love reading up and watching astronomy videos. Still to this day. But I think looking back, it's more about the videos themselves and creating the medium rather than actually finding new ground in that and truly learning the maths and the science behind it. That was kind of the secondary to what it was. I think information finding is kind of the kick out of it, which is kind of what media is, and that's why we're so gravitated towards it, because we have these ideas
Yep.
that we want to withhold onto the screen to show other people, but mostly I think the first thing we need to do is being able to convey that idea to ourselves
Correct.
and like the small group of people around us, which is something that's I think for me is a good starting point in what interests us in this medium. What is it for you? Do you have a
Yeah.
moment like
Oh,
that?
absolutely. I mean, for me, it's always been about trying to empower people that can't have that sense of empowerment through politics, through the legal system. I believe there's a way that you can impact people through the medium of film, the media of being on the screen. There's a way you can entertain people. There's a way that you can lift people's spirits that's beyond what may already be out there. And so for me, and probably for you too, and for a lot of media professionals, we place the power in ourselves and in the people that we work with to hopefully empower others. And for me, it's always been about finding real stories, finding entertaining stories, and finding a good way to represent those and to empower people. And, you know, I've loved documentary because documentary really allows you to do that. It allows you to, as a media professional, get uncomfortable, go into a place or an environment that you're not comfortable with, and to really, you know, learn stories. Unlike a journalist where you might be there for a short period of time after a natural disaster or something along those lines,
Yeah.
you can go to a place, you can stay there for longer, you can really...
The process of making a documentary is much different to writing a journal.
Yeah, exactly.
Article.
Covering a short story,
Yeah.
there's a lot more elements to it, and you have to become more personal with the people.
You kind of have to live at least adjacent to the story
Correct,
for
yeah.
a while.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
just with the nature of filmmaking.
Yeah, and it's the nature of people as well. Your
yeah.
subjects aren't going to trust you first time off
Yeah.
the bat. That trust takes time to develop.
And this is not taking away from journalists either.
Oh no, not
Because,
at all. Not at all. I
yeah.
definitely respect and appreciate what journalists do, but
Yeah.
there is a certain art form to the way media professionals do approach that, and there's certainly
And there's a
there's
bit
more
of-
time invested.
I'd say there's, especially nowadays, there's less of a clickbait element towards documentary, especially
Yeah,
when
you'd like to think
when you
so.
compare it to journalism. I know that some documentaries can be a bit biased,
Yeah.
but that's another topic. But I'm just talking about between journalism and
Yeah.
documentary, where journalism, you're there, so you kind of respect the entire story. When you're a journalist, you just want
do.
you just want the hot topic. You just
That's
want
right.
the
Get your scoop. And
the
get out
hot
of it.
title, you know, and then
Yep.
you're there interviewing one or two people. For a documentary, you're basically just let's just say you're just interviewing the entire town, getting to know the story of the
You
town.
do. You do.
Even if you're there for a few weeks, you kind of just take in what life is like
That's
in
right.
documentary.
That's right.
Personally, I don't watch too many documentaries.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I more enjoy film, and
fair enough.
that's a bit of
Yeah.
an escape. And I think everyone
Yeah.
likes that bit of escape. In saying that, it's also kind of like a little reflection on humanity.
Yeah.
A lot of
100%.
themes throughout. I'm not saying that that there's something that's quite beholden to humanity in something like Transformers or whatever, but watching films is kind of an escape for everyone, I think, and
It is.
I want to be part of that.
That's good.
And it's a part of and I talk about this movie a lot, Inception. So it's just beholden, implanting the idea within somebody else that, you know, their life is not as boring or as, say, worthless as they might think, and that's what films do.
Yeah.
And it's what is it? This is a quote in Good Will Hunting, like science and maths is what turns the world, but art is what makes us feel alive.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true. And for film, yeah, it's similar to documentary. If you have a really strong story, if you have very strong subjects, you can really create something that's quite powerful for your audiences. And although your audiences might be quite active or passive in what they're watching, they can still learn a lot from what's on screen, and they'll walk away with a certain message, and they can resonate with the ideas and the characters on screen. And when that resonance happens, they can really connect with the story. And that's what you want from your audiences. You want them to connect with the story as much as they can. If they can relate it back to their real lives, you have a really strong chance of really connecting with them on multiple levels. And, you know, as filmmakers, that's what we strive for, to really inspire, educate, entertain people, really teach them a lesson and bring to light new stories and new ideas and a fresh perspective on life. And yeah, it excites me knowing that we're on that frontier, that we're on that journey, and we can bring so many great stories into this world. It's really quite exciting.
Would you say our course that we did, that you're finishing up and I finished last year, would you say it's worth it, or say it's you need it to get into film, or?
That's a good question. It's a good question. Because I speak very subjectively, because I've had probably a different experience to you compared to a different experience from someone else.
With everyone, really.
Yeah, to everyone, really. But I definitely thought that the course benefited me greatly.
Same here.
But it's really how much you put into it.
I don't think I think some people take it for granted, or like they say they don't really learn anything at the course.
Yeah.
To that, when I reflect back on the course, I say there's so many things that I wouldn't have thought of if I didn't have the course.
Correct.
And that's and that's my process of, say, again, Inception. You don't really know that you're being taught it, because the way that things are structured, that it feels like it's your knowledge because it's coming from you.
Correct.
But it wouldn't have gotten there otherwise if, say, you weren't doing the course.
Correct. The course is so rich in resources and knowledge if you really invest. And I think I mentioned it before.
Maybe
you really got
just
to
a bit
invest.
Different, because I know that you and I spend a lot of time going to the library, just trying to do a lot of things outside of the course.
Correct.
But also within the course. Somebody else might have a different experience.
Yeah, we got heavily involved.
I was very into the filmmaking side, the philosophy of film type of thing. A lot of understanding how to use a camera. Mm-hmm. And you were more front of the camera,
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and even that, if you want to be, if I'm speaking out to an audience who really want to get on front of the camera, you have to take a lot of initiative yourself, because some of those opportunities aren't going to be given to you on a platter. You really have to go out to a lot of the student community televisions stations, the student community radio stations, and you've got to make your own way through it. You really have to try and get your own experience, because there will be classes that give you those opportunities, but you really got to put your hand up and you really got to be willing to grab that opportunity. Because let me speak from my personal view. There really isn't a huge scope for people who want to be front of camera. You really have to make that own. You have to make that yourself, and you will get given opportunities, but you really got to be willing to go out and get them. Yeah. And it's with a lot of things.
You got to do it yourself, and that's part of the difference between tertiary and secondary education. Where secondary education, you're kind of just being not forced, but you're being left in a spot for 6 hours to 8 hours at a time, and you don't really go anywhere between those hours. Whereas in tertiary education, if you wanted to miss a class, all power to you if you want to. But if you want to really learn, you got to really take that out with your own hands. And I guess people who say you don't need uni to do what we do is. I'm not saying they didn't work as hard as we did, but they might have a different experience to us. Because at the end I was very attached to getting good grades during uni, especially after the first year. First year was kind of cruising. I guess both of us were really, but
you learn a lot. You learn a lot
but last probably year and a half, I was really dedicating myself to learning the most I can, because I knew that I was only here for a short amount of time. I needed to use up all the resources, or use up what I could before I could go anywhere else.
Exactly.
Because I'm not going to get a chance like this again.
No, you're not. And RMIT, as you know, has a lot of great industry links, and I'm sure it's like with a lot of big universities and institutions, they will have fantastic industry connections, and you got to utilize those. You really got to take advantage of them. As a student, we were sent a lot of emails about certain internships and certain industry experience.
And you did your internship first year.
I did.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to. And I'll touch on it very briefly, but there's a group called Actuality Media. They're a North American filmmaking company. And one of our lecturers, Paul Richard, he saw my documentary. He really thought it had great potential. There was still a lot of things I needed to fix up and a lot of things I needed to learn, but he believed in me. He encouraged me to apply, and I got the opportunity in June to July that year, that very first year, to go to Guatemala and make a social change-making documentary. And it was one of the greatest experiences I reckon I've ever had. And to get that in your first year, to tick off that work experience within your first year, certainly it was daunting at the time. I really felt out of place initially, because there were students that were a part of this North American filmmaking program who were graduated film students who were 25 years old plus. I was the youngest person there, being 19.
A bit of out of your depth?
Yeah, a little bit at first. No, definitely. I felt really uncomfortable at first, but there's only one way that you can deal with that. You can either, float, or you can sink. And so I fought through it, and, I learned. I was really willing to learn from everyone else, and I really was open to new experiences. And as a result, I had a really wonderful time there, and I learned a lot as a producer and learned a lot as a filmmaker, and got the best experience out of it, and did really good networking as well. A lot of those people I still keep in touch with. A lot of them have more industry experience than I do, and so it's good to keep those people in your network list. It's very, very important going forward. Yeah. They're all from all over the world, so
if you
super
get
important.
anything out of doing this course, is that the connections you make, even with our group of friends, where we're all, I think every single one of us has something media related going on.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to stay relevant. It's good to continue to foster those relationships and also build up those skills. So, yeah, having that experience within my first year was super duper important. Another really good experience I had, I'll touch on it very briefly, was I got to go on a global exchange to San Diego, which was absolutely wonderful, because at our university you do get a certain view of how films are made, and we have certain exposure to certain film equipment and stuff like that, but over in America, particularly very close to Los Angeles, you'll have film schools there that are quite advanced with their filmmaking. They use really large Sony cameras. They use, Reds, and they're really high-tech, high production value. And you certainly learn just how high the stakes are in those really big and really largely crude productions. And so I was thankfully able to get involved.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh, it's ridiculous. And this is college level as well, Matthew. This is like where people are building up to get into the industry. So the standards are high, the stakes are really high too, but it's good that they're trying to get you at that level very early on, because the moment you don't take something seriously in the actual industry, if you get an opportunity there, is the moment that your name's going to be crossed out straight away and said, no, this person's not taking it seriously enough. And the opportunities you get once you're there, probably not many. So you want to definitely make the most of it. And at college level,
but that also doesn't mean you can't.
No.
Work your way up towards that.
Definitely. But there are certain situations where you really need to be on top of things. Otherwise, your name might not possibly be thrown up again in a good way. So it's important to keep that seriousness in mind, but definitely there's ways to work your way up to it. But certainly San Diego was a great experience to know how things are done in the US, because as we're probably speaking right now, we're trying to build our way up with our skills to hopefully get to the big guns in the United States one day, potentially. And so it's good to see how they do it there, because that's one of the greatest film industries in the world, one of the best functioning ones, certainly one of the highest paid, highest stakes.
Yeah, it's where you want to be if you're
serious.
filmmaking in the West.
If you're serious, that's where you want to be.
In saying that, Australia does have we probably make the best horror films in the world right now.
We do.
I think pretty much every single horror film, bar the extremely talking about 100 million plus budgets, are filmed in Australia. Yeah. So Chapter 2 was not filmed here, but everything else below that is probably filmed here.
That's very, very decent.
Yeah, and the horror movie landscape's gotten very good over the last half decade or so.
It has.
Didn't used to be very good. We had a lot of got really gore horror and shock horror.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the 2000s and the early 2010s, if you remember. But now it looks like something that's not only doable but foreseeable for a lot of people in our industry, especially now. Are there any short or what's your short-term goal to get to the long-term?
Short-term goal is probably the most practical pathway for me is probably remaining in Melbourne or possibly thinking of maybe going to Sydney and doing something related to presenting, either radio or television.
Podcast.
Yeah, well, that's it. There is some really good opportunities here in Melbourne to do, different types of presenting. Throughout my course at RMIT, I managed to do another course through AFL commentary. So there's an opportunity possibly in the new part of next year to do a bit of work with the NIRS, which is the National Indigenous Radio Service, and that would be hosting games from them through SYN. And just for those people who don't know the National Indigenous Radio Service, they broadcast to remote communities in Australia and a lot of Indigenous communities up north and parts of Western Australia. So it's a really, really great initiative that they have going. And for the very, very first time in partnership with RMIT, they're going to try and send their radio streams through Melbourne as well, through SYN Media, which is an absolutely fantastic initiative.
Yeah.
So that would be a really great start to my career in the media industry, doing something for them. Nothing's set in stone, nothing's guaranteed. I don't even know if I'm, the right fit for them and if I'm even cut out for doing AFL commentary, but it would be a great position to start with. Yeah. So that's probably what I'm looking at next year.
The elephant in the room is that you're not Indigenous.
No, but that's the thing. You don't have to be. You don't have to be. Everyone who did
it's based on merit.
There were about 3 Indigenous students who did the course with us, but they said that it doesn't have to be an Indigenous person.
And it's not for everyone.
No, it certainly isn't. And as you probably are aware, AFL commentary is one of the hardest commentary positions to be in because the game moves quick.
You got to know 44 names.
You got to know where the ball is,
you gotta know,
what's happening. You got to know the position of the ball on the ground. You need to know who has the ball.
You got to know how many games they played.
There's a lot of information.
You got to know their skill set.
But like anything, Matthew, you prepare well, you do your research during the week, you know 44 players, you know their backgrounds, you do enough diligent work, and you get plenty of practice in, you can nail it. But it's not for everyone.
You do have to know, but it's better to do it than not do it. Yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's right.
Even if you don't hit the mark.
That's right.
You can always work on it and hit the mark later on. It's better to know where you are now rather than failing on when you're just sort of cruising. I guess that's where we line up in terms of this podcast. But it's better to do this than not do this. And if it gets anywhere, then it gets anywhere.
That's right. Yeah, so that's my short term. So short term is to do media work in Melbourne and possibly tie that into the AFL because we are both very passionate about it. There's opportunities available.
I think both of us, out of everyone we know, we're the most beholden to Melbourne.
Definitely.
Just because of the AFL.
Exactly.
It is something that we both want to explore, at least in the short term. In the short term, we mean next 3 years or so.
Yeah. Probably
at least till we're 30.
Exactly. Well, that's right.
And in the meantime, we'll work on other things.
Exactly. A lot of different media.
Yeah, and I'm more of like an analyst type of.
Oh yeah.
So I wouldn't.
So you might be more statistic related kind of stuff.
I might be the Ash Chua of the
the
man.
That's a very, very important position.
I do like the stats. I like the.
Be a very good position to be in.
Yeah, I do like looking at not the stats, but just analyzing the game from a not theoretical, but a
analytical point of view.
I already used the word.
You did, didn't you?
From a tactics point of view.
Tactical
point of view. So
it's important to have that insight.
And I really do have respect for most of the for like all of the general types. General players.
Oh, absolutely.
Those ones that command the team. And just see what they do. Just because the game of AFL, at least at AFL level, is that pretty much everyone has the same skill set. Everyone's the best in the country what they do.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
They wouldn't
it's
be there
about
if
it's about what's
they
between the years, what separates the best teams. Because
That's correct.
I think every team has someone who can hit a target from 50 meters out, no problems. But it's about when to run,
Exactly.
when to kick, when to
Yeah,
handball.
absolutely. How well teams gel.
And all that stuff is between the years.
Certainly.
And I like to think about that a lot. And it's like when you look at most of the lists, every list is going to have a top 2 talent. Mm-hmm. And like the difference between each club's top 2 talent, and we're just getting to football here. Every top 2 talent is more or less about maximum 5% worse or better than any other club's top 2 players. But that 5% is a lot. It's a lot. You know, there's a lot of difference between a Dustin Martin to a Jack Steele, for instance. Mm-hmm. But anyway, this is a whole other topic.
Exactly, but it certainly sounds like you've got interest in that certain area of the AFL, which is fantastic.
And there's so many things. Well, I'll just touch up on a little bit. There's just looks and just the way a team looks mentally prepared is so much more important than the actual preparation when it comes to body condition, stuff like that. But
Absolutely.
anyway,
but that's
in the short term, I do photography.
Yes,
Yeah,
fantastic.
and I'm trying to get that off the ground on my Instagram.
That's good.
So
Good
just
way to promote
going to
yourself.
conventions and practicing that, which is also sort of a stepping stone to the next thing, which is cinematography. It's usually very hard to practice cinematography on the regular. So for the meantime, it's just photography.
But if you've got the right eye for it and you know how to frame things and you know what particular things you want within the lens, then that gives you a really, really good starting point for eventually going to a bigger camera, more high tech.
And when I first started learning about that stuff, I thought I knew a lot, but pretty much every single week, every single month, I find out some new trick or something new about the camera that I'd be like, oh, I could use that. And then
I didn't know it had that functionality.
Yeah. And then over time, it kind of gets to the point where there's so much to think about where I just need to focus on these 3 things. If I get those 3 things right first, then I can move on to other things, you know? Right. And that's with everything, you know? We got to learn how to do a guerrilla setup like we have in this podcast before we move on to bigger projects.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And same goes for certain media projects that you're trying to master. Like, for example, when I did a class over in San Diego, it was a screenplay writing class. My teacher said to me first up, don't try and make a feature film to start. Start small, make a short film, master a story within 2 minutes before you think about 120 minutes. And it's completely true. And it's the same with your camera work. True. Master what you have at a very small level. You master that. You feel like you're diligent enough with that. You take a step up. Only when you're ready.
Nobody can run a marathon without running 100 meters.
Exactly. It's the same principle. It's honestly the same principle. So, for example, I've made 2 short films in my life after going from documentary making to just random media edits and shots that I wanted to try and master, certain movements, all that kind of stuff, certain manipulations that you have with the camera. And you take a step up and you go to a short film. First short film was terrible. Second short film was a lot better, a lot more high quality.
But it's better to have it than not have it.
And not have it, that's right. And so the third one will be 10 times better. But you keep building that up until you think you're ready.
I think that's, in terms of success, not a lot of people, they can't visualize that kind of thing.
Correct.
Because essentially what a feature film is let's talk about a 120-minute film, 2 hours. That's 60 2-minute clips put together, right?
Yeah.
So if you can get 2-minute clips perfect, then you can get 2-minute clips. You got 4, and then you keep going.
Build it up.
And
that's
then
right.
Over time, you start to know what to expect from everything.
Correct.
And that goes with everything.
You build
everything. Start with the smallest level, and that's and this is kind of an allegory to life. You start with the smallest thing. Start with the little things you can control.
Gotta have your base.
you can't go up to Broadway and start doing these massive epic shit.
No chance.
You gotta learn how to spend $100 before you spend $1,000.
Exactly. And right now, for example, we talked about presenting before, my interest in doing, front of camera stuff. I got a lot of my experience through doing front of camera stuff through, volunteering, saying, okay, I'm going to host
guerrilla setup.
Yeah, I'm going to host a basketball game. And I hosted 10 basketball games before I got an opportunity. Yeah, the Snake Pit, a web series I did, hosted a web series. And so I did just small projects here and there that at the time it's voluntary. It's just just building up your skills and it's just exposure. You're going to be in front of a crowd every week. The crowd's not going to be massive. It might be 30, 40 people. The
crowd might not even necessarily care.
They may not even be paying attention to what you're doing, but deep in your mind and deep in your heart and you know what you're doing right, you know what you're doing wrong, and you're building on those skills. Exactly. It's always a starting point.
You don't wake up one morning and suddenly, I reckon I could direct that.
I reckon I could, yeah.
I could direct a 2-hour movie.
I reckon I could host a television show. No, you don't think any of that. You need to build up your skills. And, you get opportunities once you start really kicking into gear.
I guess
it's been fantastic.
Harking back to what we were talking before, if anything, that's what the course taught us.
Yeah,
But that does and doesn't come from the course because the idea
it's your own interpretation.
It's my own. I guess we all came to that realization.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's really your own experiences, What do you get out of something, People will take away all sorts of different things, but through utilising what is at RMIT, and RMIT have some fantastic facilities, some fantastic opportunities for students to get involved in television, radio, productions, short films, feature films, documentaries. There's so many different opportunities available. There's even creative funding, so if you wanted to do one of your own artistic projects, if you pitch an idea and you do it well enough, then there's opportunities for that as well. So it's really what you can do in the course, what you're willing to do, what you're willing to compensate for, and what you're willing to get out of it.
It's about taking responsibility for
taking
own
opportunities. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate enough to take those opportunities, and I certainly don't have many regrets walking out of the course. In fact, I walk away with a lot more experience than I did.
We're not perfect in this either, because I think both of us can agree that there are things that we haven't done that we should have done.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be that, but
I feel like I always feel like I should be doing more as a creator.
I think that's every creator. I feel like there's so many opportunities available. We always feel like we are a step behind, but essentially that's a good mindset to have because it motivates you to do more. And everyone's got a different pathway in, but there is always someone a step ahead of you. So it's always good to try and get to that next level.
And I'm not directing this at anyone, but the creators that kind of fall behind are the ones that think they're doing enough.
Yeah,
and
correct.
They're a bit angry at the world.
Correct.
Like, why am I thing?
Why aren't I doing that?
Where's my $1 million?
Yes.
You gotta, you gotta learn how to walk 10 meters before you walk 100.
Yeah, never. Like, obviously, be happy with what you've done. Be happy with the level of work that you're creating, but I always feel like I've never been fully satisfied with what I've done. I always feel like there's room for improvement, and that always motivates me for the next level.
I think every single project I've done, I always go, I wish I can go back and redo that again.
Yeah, or at least next time around, I'll execute this differently. I think it's an important mindset to have. Obviously get involved, do things well, but always celebrate milestones and achievements. Always pat yourself on the back for doing something because you've went above and beyond what you've needed to do, and you've ended up creating something, and that is in itself a really great achievement. Yeah. But remember that there's always room for improvement. There's always ways that you can do things in a different style. So never be fully satisfied, but also it needs to be a bit.
I don't think there's ever been like a perfect movie. No. Also, I don't think there's ever been a movie where something hasn't gone wrong.
Correct.
Like I can imagine any movie that there's something gone wrong in production.
You've got to adapt, and
no matter how well prepared you think you are, there's always something fucky going on.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
and you can't do anything about it.
When we made our short film, we filmed outside, for example. and you're only in control of so much when you do that.
No one's in control of the sun.
No one's in control of the sun, and particularly
No
if
one's
you're a
in control of the
listener,
Earth's rotation.
if you're a listener and you're listening from Melbourne, you'll know when I say this that Melbourne is a very, very unpredictable place as far as weather's concerned. You have 4 seasons in one day. So if you film anything here in Melbourne, be prepared for the worst.
Yeah, put on 4 layers, but be prepared to take out 3.
Have several prepared. But
Yeah.
that's the thing, with experience, you'll get better
You get,
at
you know,
adapting to that change. And
Yeah, and I guess
learn.
not a lot of people, but it's hard to accept that as creatives we are starting from zero. The course does not really give you any credentials in terms of I'm a verified creator. Being a verified creator is about creating, really. So you got to have that first before you jump into anything larger than what you can do.
That's correct.
And by proxy, our whole process of creating is collaborative.
Yes, it is.
Which in of itself is the best and worst thing about it.
You're not wrong. But you need to be able to collaborate as a media creator. Have to.
And you got to learn how to collaborate you got to learn how to do things by yourself.
Yep.
And once you learn how to do that, you got to learn how to do it with one other person. And you keep going,
Build it up.
keep going,
Build it up.
keep going until you hit a really high number.
Yes, because one day, if you become a producer, for example, you will be working with a lot of
people with a lot of money, with a lot of agendas.
The stakes are incredibly high.
You need to please a lot of people to a certain extent.
Yes, you do.
And that is scary. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to say that's not scary. That is scary.
It's quite scary. Yeah, it's quite scary.
I was trying to find another word for it.
Well, for example, someone who spoke to us at RMIT this year was Sue Maslin, and Sue Maslin is the producer of The Dressmaker, incredibly successful film, and she said that the film industry is one of the hardest industries to work in because things aren't so settled. If you're someone who's on a contract for a film, you may not necessarily get another contract for another film that comes up. So the depression rates are quite high.
A lot of overworking.
A lot of overworking.
A lot of unpaid hours.
A lot of unpaid hours. A lot of stressful hours.
It's not really an hourly paid job unless you're a gaffer or whatever.
So there is a lot of insecurities and a lot of anxieties that do come with the industry. But we're all incredibly aware of it. And you should be aware of it. You should be aware of the realities. You should embrace
the torture.
But embrace it. Embrace it and know...
I shouldn't have said torture.
But know that at the same time that it's incredibly rewarding, particularly if you make something that everyone's on the same page with and it changes lives. You will make something one day that will genuinely change lives for the better.
I think for me,
that's what you got to aim for.
I think the one thing I would be most proud of is that if I can write and direct a script that is, say, beholden or a part of my soul into the script.
Yep.
If I can create that and get not only myself but a lot of people on the project on board with it, with this one idea, could be a very simple idea.
Could be.
If I can get them on the same page with that, and I'll be extremely satisfied with that project. And I guess I got to start with the smallest thing possible.
It's where every good idea starts from, a very, very small sprout. You got to grow it. You really got to foster it. It's important.
Yeah. Is there anything that has, say, surprised you in this media journey?
Surprised me. I think in a weird way, everything surprised me because I really didn't have a massive amount of expectation going in because I didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah.
I just I knew it would be a really hard journey. I knew that to get to the very top, you really have to work super duper hard and you have to do a lot of things away from your actual hours in university that are required. You have to do a lot more than that.
It's not a typical 9 to 5.
But what's surprised me, I think, is that although it's incredibly tough and you're going to lose a lot of sleep and it's incredibly difficult at times, it is incredibly rewarding. And I've had a lot of fun with it. I've really had a lot of fun with it. And the people I've met have been extraordinary.
If it wasn't difficult, then it wouldn't be rewarding.
Yeah. It's a hard one because, a lot of things have surprised me about it. Like, for example, you mentioned, off, away from what you see on screen, there is a lot behind the scenes with a production like Lord of the Rings, such a big production.
Yeah.
It is incredible.
Hundreds, even thousands of people.
In a way, I was very surprised, like, how a film is created. Like, you just don't really know until you see it happen in front of you, until you actually make one, all the little tricks, all the ways that you do a shot, reverse shot, all the ways that you set up a scene, all the things that are required. It is a surprise how much is involved in a film. Even something like a 2 or 3 minute scene can take several days to execute. So that in a way is a surprise if you don't really know what is kind of required for that.
And the simplest things could take forever.
Yeah.
The simplest scene might take forever because the light is not behaving in the way you think. I think one of the most surprising things is, you were talking about it before, got an idea from it. Like before I started the course, I had no idea how to edit.
Yeah.
And I know you edited something before you started the course, but it was a documentary. But I guess having an idea and putting it, say, on paper or in writing, and then putting it in a media format, whether it be audio or video, is a completely different process to what we thought.
Yeah.
And it's not easy at all.
No, it's incredibly time consuming.
Yeah, and we're no experts of it today. We weren't, and we were definitely not experts when we thought we were, say, at the end of our first year. And there's always something to learn with every single edit, and that's kind of the mentality we have to approach.
Yeah, absolutely. It's particularly with editing. The easier the process will be for editing is how well you prepare your shoots, because your shoots actually take the shortest amount of time if you compare it to the editing, because the editing is just ridiculously long process, particularly if you're like me and probably like you. You're incredibly meticulous, so you'll be looking at everything in the frame, and if something shakes or something's out of proportion or something is too overexposed, you are going to rip your head out. So I think one thing that probably did surprise me is just how well you have to plan for everything.
Yeah.
And that includes...
We've both gotten better over the
absolutely.
last few years.
So when you plan, a film, for example, if you can plan your shot list, if you can plan what your paper edit's going to look like, once you get to the edit table, you kind of have a greater sense of the shots that you have. Everything's pretty well organized. Your audio is pretty well set out. All of those factors that can really be the most difficult part when you get to an edit table. Because if your audio is terrible and, your shot just doesn't... The continuity is not there with other shots that you have in the sequence, you actually cannot use it. It might be such a terrible quality that you can't use it, and then suddenly that scene is out of your film, and you're in real strife. So,
and on the other hand of that, it might be so terrible, but you can do some clever things.
Yeah,
post production
that
can make it work.
Yeah, but
and
you shouldn't have to do that.
In a sense, that makes you aware of things that you weren't before. Like you can. Yeah. If you think that I'm not saying you can save it in the edit. I'm saying that the edits, you can still do a lot of things in the edit.
With every film I've done Dongin, I reckon I've went to the editing room. Yeah,
you might be unable to go back and film it again.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's correct. Yeah. That's correct.
And sometimes you just have to do it in the edit. Yeah. And in that, you go like, oh, I can get away with this and that.
Yep.
And next time I do something like this, you just have to be aware of it. And a lot of filmmaking is being aware of everything.
With every film I've done, I've always wanted my time back for the planning. Always wanted it back, because there is so much planning that goes into it.
You're always missing something.
You're always missing something. But with every film, with every project you do, the better the planning gets, the cleaner the planning is, the easier it is for you as an editor, or for your editor if you're dishing the film off to someone else to edit it, the easier that becomes for everyone. And it makes your life so much easier on the editing block when you have everything really well planned, really well structured, and everything is in place.
And nothing's going to be perfect.
Nothing's going to be perfect, but at least it's going to be a lot cleaner than what it possibly could be if you didn't do any planning. If you just went out there and just hoped for the best. So, planning is really important. So I suppose, how much is required certainly did surprise me. Shouldn't have been as surprised, but there is so many different factors that are in play. So, but I am also very surprised how good the course was. I think, the course could improve in a lot of ways, but I think...
We're surprised ourselves by how far we've...
I think that in itself is a surprise too. Yeah, just how far we've came, how well we've honed in on our skills and gotten better.
I think from our first year to our last year, there's decent number of... Our third year lectures were a lot less people than our first year lectures, let's put it that way.
Definitely. Well, I mean, no classes. Well, I mean, none of those lectures are compulsory. but
it's an indicator of how many people actually stuck with the course.
Yeah.
Either they changed or dropped out or whatever.
That's true.
But everybody goes through their own experience with finding out what they really want to do post high school.
Correct.
Which is one of the hardest things to do nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a difficult thing. And that's why really, when I was deciding on this career, I had to really take it back to when I was a kid because, it's such a difficult decision to make, to choose your life path straight out of school.
We're like 15, 16 when we're choosing our VCE subjects.
It's not an easy task.
Strange. And when you're 18 choosing what course you want to do, I was like, I don't know what the fuck. I just see a bunch of sentences.
And I mean, we've matured so much from that age, from that tender age. We've matured so much throughout the course. Like I changed a lot from 19 to 21, let alone 22.
20
so
to 21 even.
You take big steps every year in what you do.
Yeah. And I get pretty
tough.
renowned in my family as an old person, even though I'm
old soul.
23. I got an old soul.
You got an old soul.
That's because I don't know. Just because I just find it laid back a bit. I mean, there's focused on me. I don't really care about. I do care about other people, but it's more of my own responsibility to take care of myself before I take care of others.
Absolutely.
And you don't just flip on a switch and it's like, oh, I can be a parent.
Yeah, I think it's and I think this is one thing I've learned with filmmaking is. You do have to look after yourself. You're not going to get a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a lot of time where you can relax.
You got to learn where your limits are.
Yeah.
And know when you can push them.
Yeah. And equally,
before you can step out and do other things.
But equally, if you're the head of a production, and you're getting people who are working on a project with you, and at this level, we don't have the money nor the resources to pay people, so they're volunteering. You really have to take care of those people, and you really have to
you also have
reward them.
You really have to. It's a double-edged sword. You have to find people that are motivated enough to stick with it.
To stick with it, that's right.
And B, you can't push them too much because at the end of the day, they're not being paid.
Yeah, the expectation shouldn't be too ridiculously high.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, you really got to take care of those people.
No role too large that
you're
relying on other people, but no role too significant that if they do get lazy, that you can't pick up the slack.
Correct.
And that's a real double-edged sword that I guess I've learned definitely over the past year that mostly you gotta do things yourself and like live the other director in the company. She's done most of the movie herself just because that's just the nature of making these short films. And she's done everything herself. Well, most things herself because she can't. It's not that she can't rely on people, but she can't afford to, just because of the way it works. And that's the hard thing in the short term, and that might actually be the most surprising thing about realizing that post graduation is that you have to do a lot of things by yourself, but in saying that, you can rely on people once you hit a certain threshold. So what
Correct.
we're doing now with this podcast, I know that it's basically a 2-person project, sometimes 3 when we have an audio engineer on, but we unfortunately couldn't get one on today. But 2 or 3 people, that's not a lot of people. It's 1 hour, maybe 2, maybe even 40 minutes, 30 minutes. And it's easy, simple, shoot it out the next day, whatever. Yeah? Should we wrap it up now? Yeah, we've done about an hour.
Yeah, I think
Any
the
last words?
final thing I'll add is that it's very important that you continue to be versatile in what you do. This whole course, I've never really had one end goal in mind. I want to be successful in the industry. I want to do great things,
Because you
share
want to be
great
a
stories.
broadcaster and a writer / director / on-screen talent as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I want to do,
And
I'm not going to limit myself.
Yeah.
Simple as
I'm
that.
sort of the same thing. Like I do photography. I want to do director photography. I want to do directing.
Yeah.
I want to do writing, producing.
Yep.
I also don't mind being on camera.
People
Yeah.
want versatility. I think
Yeah.
people really turned on by someone who can not only hold a camera, but can hold a script, that can get on camera if they need to.
And just the
just
more
being versatile.
the more things you know you can do, the more things you understand. In
The more
terms of-
opportunities you'll
Yeah.
get. Yeah,
it just makes things easier for everyone else.
absolutely.
And that's kind of the thing. If you take anything about it, it's just if you're on a film set, then if the director doesn't have to worry about what you can do, then that's one less thing that they have to worry about.
That's correct.
Basically, and
That's correct.
that's kind of what you want. And yeah,
Yeah, trust will build over time.
it doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight, but you really need to be willing to put yourself out there, give yourself as many different opportunities as you can, and just that'll grow you as a media personality and a media professional. And I think that, it comes with time, but you really need to be willing to grab any opportunity that's possible. You know, you're not going to get paid for a lot of those hours, but the kind of value that you will get out of it is going to be far greater than what they could have possibly paid you in the first place, because it will get you a gig somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
But it's always about increasing that show reel, increasing that experience, and just putting yourself out there and be
That's what,
willing to do the hard yards.
Talked about it last night. That's what Steve Martin said. So be so good that they can't ignore
They
you.
can't ignore you. Exactly.
Yeah.
Put so many strings on your bow that you got 2 violins. You
Yeah.
just got to do it. You
Yeah.
just got to do it.
Yeah, it's a bit disheartening, but you gotta basically be good enough that they have to pay you.
That's right. And there isn't a time limit either. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
get worried. They think first year out of university, you need to land
And
an
everyone's
industry
different.
job
Some people get jobs straight out of uni,
straight out of uni.
which
Some people have
which
jobs
is-
lined up while
it's
they're
not
in
wrong.
university.
It's not wrong to be envious of those people.
No,
But
it's
you
like
gotta-
good on them for knowing
Yeah,
someone
you
or
gotta
knowing something.
you gotta compare you to yourself.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, set yourself with goals. Obviously, you know, be hard on yourself at times, because you should be a critic of yourself. You should be your hardest critic. But certainly surround yourself with good people. Take good care of yourself. Have hobbies away from what you're doing.
Yeah,
But always be passionate about what you do, and always believe in where you're going. I think it's so important to have self-belief and self-confidence. And yeah, just believe, really present yourself well. Remember, you are a brand. You're trying to sell yourself to others. So make sure that you sell those skills, and make sure you just be the absolute best version of yourself that you can be. And if you do that, then you're going to have a really, really good, long career, but you're also going to have an enjoyable one.
yeah. Hope we've had a good conversation about the media landscape and what we've done so far in the past few years. We'll reconvene another time, but for now, we'll be talking later. But we'll reconvene this podcast at a later date, I reckon. Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you very much for listening, and good luck with all your future endeavours.